Okay, what we've got here is the speedometer board from Brennan, who's Lectrick Enterprises. And you can see it's a very neat looking board. Everything seems to be functional on it. We're just trying to work out exactly what inputs we need to do to get all the functions to work, because there seems to be a bit of confusion about this. Let's apply power to the unit first of all. And we have a speedo display, and an odometer display, and a trip meter display. We also have a couple of bar gauges here, which are connected to the audio inputs via these RCA phono connectors at the back here. So plug an audio source into here, and those will go up and down. We can demonstrate that by just touching the inputs, and you can see that left channel and right channel make these bar gauges go up and down. That's just simulating the resistance, and my finger's just simulating the varying resistance you'd get from an audio source. Let's put a speed signal on using our test rig, and you can see that we seem to have two separate speedo circuits on here, which are working independently. One is driving these two digits here, which is the same as Brennan's standalone odometer, and one is driving the 3-digit display at the top here. It seems that this display at the bottom is configured for kilometers per hour, and the top display seems to vary depending on the position of this switch at the bottom here. This switch at the bottom has two positions, kilometers per hour and miles per hour. You can see that right now it's in the kilometers per hour position, so the two displays are reading pretty much the same value. If we flip this one into miles per hour, you can see the reading on this one goes down, so 41 miles per hour or 67 kilometers per hour, or thereabouts. This is the odometer display, these last 6 digits on the large display at the bottom here, and these do count up as the miles increase. You can see if we wait for a few minutes, you'll see that these digits start to increase. We're on 175 now, look, it's just changed to 176. This trip meter also increases with miles per hour, with the total number of miles travelled. This seems to be reading off because that's gone over 128, so that's reading probably 104, because this is only actually 2 digits representing the speed here. So let's bring that speed back down again so that both displays are reading. A correct value. So we're looking at about 80 kilometers an hour, being about 50 miles per hour. One thing we're not still sure about on here is the function of these 3 yellow indicator LEDs here. This one seems to be on the whole time. We don't seem to be able to do anything that turns it on or off. These two seem to be off the whole time. We've not figured out how to switch those on yet, or even if they're supposed to be functional. We have a little pot connected here, which as we adjust that seems to vary the reading on this large 3-digit display. So it doesn't affect that one. That's, we believe, controlled by the software in the PIC in terms of the pulses per mile that's programmed in there in the calibration facility. This one is calibrated by this little pot that hangs off of the board. Looking at the back of the board, apart from that potentiometer there, we have this switch which changes the large display from kilometers per hour into miles per hour. I'm not sure what this one does. We haven't really investigated that. And we have 2 other potentiometers here, one marked gain and one marked output cal. We actually have this board for a repair job that we're doing for a customer, so we've not got too much time to investigate what it's doing, but we thought this video might be useful to those of you that have the Brennan speedometer to identify what we think everything does. There's another potentiometer here marked bar graph gain, so I guess that just changes the calibration of the bar gauges. The red-green indicators are connected to positive switched signals. We have 7 positive switched signals, each of which, if we put it to, those change over because of the way we've got our rig wired. So generally a high 12 volt input on any of those inputs will switch it into red, and disconnecting the input or pulling it low will take it to green. That's actually the opposite way round to the Knights of England way. The way we've got it on ours is green represents 12 volts and red represents no signal at all. This is actually the reason why we had to repair this board. there was a slight problem with this board in that these LEDs are directional. You have to put them in the right way to make them work. Now if you look, I don't know if you can see on the video, but each of these devices has a small nick in one corner. That represents the cathode end of the LED. Now this board somehow had been assembled with that little nick to the right hand side, which meant that none of the indicator LEDs would illuminate. So we've desoldered that and switched each of the LEDs round and you can see that it now works correctly. So the other thing we're not sure about is we've got two wires hanging out of here which are connected to a push button. Now it's marked trip reset, but we don't seem to be able to get the trip meter to reset. I don't know if that's a fault or if we're doing something incorrectly, but it doesn't seem to reset. The other thing we've noticed is if we switch the unit off and power it up again, I would expect the total miles to be stored, but the trip meter seems to have gone back to the value it was before we started it. That may have stored actually this time, but it doesn't always. It seems to be a bit intermittent, so I don't know if it's another fault on the board or if it's a design issue. We're not sure, but wouldn't really like to comment because we don't know the design of the circuit. You'll notice that if we put a light signal into this input, the LEDs dim, or at least the green LEDs dim, and the LEDs in the bar gauges dim. The red ones don't appear to dim, and looking at the schematic, we've just actually traced through the schematic of the circuit and seen how it's wired, and it looks like there's no way that they could actually dim. They just illuminate constantly. But the green LEDs and these yellow LEDs and the bar gauge LEDs do dim or brighten depending on whether you've got a light signal on. So lights on and it dims all of those LEDs. Lights off and they come up to full brightness again. It affects that miles per hour indicator as well, look. And you'll also notice that when we first apply power to the unit, all of those LEDs stay dim for a few seconds and then brighten up. That's pretty much what we know about this board at the moment. Hopefully some of you who have Brennan's board and are struggling to find information about it might find that useful. Thanks for listening.